Welcome, everybody. This is episode 80 of the Standing 8 podcast, live streaming on this Sunday evening, March 20th, 2022. Hope everyone is doing well, staying safe, enjoying the weekend. I've got the usual suspect with me at the moment, Courtney Tanner, aka the Burt Brown Sugar, always knowledgeable, insightful with his views. How are you doing today, Courtney?
Hey, blessed. Always blessed to be back on the show. It's been a minute, but hey, there's nothing I'd love to do more, and no place I'd rather be on a Sunday evening with y'all. And hey, as far as I'm concerned, we could go ahead and dispense with the pleasantries and talk some shit. Let's hop into it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We've got a fire episode today. Checking in as special guest panelist is Sean Fitzgerald, founder and president of the Just Boxing Foundation, based in Los Angeles. Welcome to the show. Great seeing you, Sean. Any opening words you like to start off with?
Just thank you both very much for having me and to your whole crew. I think this is the first time I've ever been received the title of special guest panelist, so I'll try not to let it go to my head.
No pressure. No pressure.
I've talked to both of you gentlemen before and your team. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. And I love your intro, by the way. You guys even found a way to make me look cool in doing that in the pictures, which is not easy to do. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Awesome. So I initially known you, Sean, as the host of Just Boxing, the podcast.
Right.
But now it has transitioned to something greater as the Just Boxing Foundation, which is a registered 501c nonprofit organization. And if you visit the website, justboxing.org, which I'll pull it up right now, you can see that its mission statement is to support past and empower future generations of boxers. So Sean, first off, congratulations on the foundation. You've been doing great, impactful things with it in a short amount of time. My first question to start off, how exactly did this foundation come about?
That's a really good question. So, I mean, you've had an opportunity to be a guest on the show, so you kind of have an idea of how I run it. And I've done a couple different podcasts in the boxing space. So, before Just Boxing Live, it was Beat the Count, and that kind of morphed into Just Boxing Live. And it became sort of an opportunity for us to share perspectives of some young up and coming fighters in like the Los Angeles and Orange County area. And I think I just wanted to do sort of more for that batch of fighters. And so one of the things that we would do is people would come on Just Boxing Live, and every person who came on got like a gift basket, right? And we would say like, oh, okay, here's like a t-shirt and here's some waters and some bars and like nutrition bars and like things like that. And then it evolved into like, and here's a thermos and here's some coffee and all these different things, because I was getting to hear all these really compelling stories and really I was just motivated by all the people who I would get to meet on the show. And that's not just boxers, it's even, people like yourself, Aaron, who got to camp. I got an opportunity to meet so many fascinating people and to converse with kind of world champions and do things that I never thought that it was never part of the plan. Not that we had much of a plan initially with the podcast, and then the pandemic hit.
Yeah.
And, we would film that broadcast live every Sunday from a local gym here, and the gym was shut down, not permanently. Fortunately, they were able to sort of withstand the hit of the pandemic, and they're open and well now. Sweet Science Boxing and MMA here in Hawthorne, California. But, we couldn't do shows from the gym at the time. And even when things started to open back up, you guys probably still see, for local shows and things like that, every single one of them gets impacted by COVID in some way. A positive test and a fighter can't compete, or a trainer can't go, or, whatever the case is. And so in the early going, it was kind of like, it was risky for us to go and meet with fighters who had scheduled fights in the area and things like that, because we didn't want to be responsible for impacting their livelihood in a way, you know what I mean? For making it so that they can't compete and can't do things like that. so that's all kind of a long story to say, like, while that podcast was winding down, we actually had been winding up this idea of Just Boxing Foundation, where we were going to be able to do more things for, amateur fighters, for retired fighters. We had all these different ways that we wanted to be able to help. And it just so happened that as the podcast had to sort of take a hiatus as a result of the pandemic, there were just more opportunities to help fighters, and to focus instead on the foundation. And so I think that it's always been a goal of ours to kind of to help the sport. I could go into more detail, but essentially you guys probably are aware of this as well. Like when you interview the number of fighters that we've had the opportunity to interview, you find a lot of these young and talented people. So many people have the boxing saved my life story in some way or another, right? And I have mine. And in a lot of ways, the foundation is a way of me paying it forward to a sport that did really positive things in my life when I needed it to. I'm doing my best to sort of pay it back, in the best way that I can. So that was where the foundation started, and we got opportunities to focus a lot more on it when we weren't able to focus on the podcast anymore. And so that's why we've been able to, since 2019, I think we were founded in November 2019. You can see here, we're a relatively small team, but we've handed out just over, $13K in scholarships, grants, boxing equipment, and things like that. So, and we're trying to grow that all the time. So that's I guess the short, long version of it.
Yeah, that's great. And it's great seeing how the podcast kind of evolved into something more meaningful as the Just Boxing Foundation. And more specifically, I want to talk about the scholarship arm of the foundation. Tell us about that. Like, how many recipients did you end up receiving?
We gave two $1,200 scholarships in this last year in September. So we picked two people from Los Angeles and Orange County who received $1,200 scholarships. So those are amateur boxers who compete, for USA Boxing. They're registered USA Boxing members with competition experience that are also attending a college, public college and university. And so we went through an application process. People submitted essays and applications and their credentials. It was open to amateurs and professionals. And so we just did that in this past September. So we gave away two of those scholarships. The scholarship was like an idea that we had back in 2019 when we first started. And it was going to be probably the second major initiative that we did. So the first thing that we did is we gave grants to all of the Olympic qualifiers from Los Angeles and Orange County who made it to Louisiana to compete in the Olympic trials. So we'd given those grants, and the next major initiative we had planned was the scholarship. And we got all the way through, basically up to the point where we were about to announce the scholarship. And then the pandemic hit and everything shut down. And that became a real moment for us of transition. But the idea at the time was, if we're not going to help fighters through this, then what are we doing? Right. So we kind of had to stop the plans for the scholarship and readjust and say, hey, let's focus instead on what we call the Pandemic Protection and Relief Grant. So we gave grants to fighters who had professional boxing contests canceled in the months of, I think it was April, May, or June of 2020. So those were grants that people could apply for. And I think we gave away something like $4.5K in grants or something like that to professional boxers at that time.
Yeah. And obviously, because of the pandemic, your initiatives, your mission statement had to change from the scholarship to helping those in need, the boxers, because of events being canceled, what have you. Now that things have settled down from the moment, do you plan to continue off the scholarship initiative? Like, will this be a yearly thing now going forward?
Well, that's an excellent question. First of all, I'll say that for Just Boxing Foundation, we do have a board, and decisions don't happen in a vacuum. So everybody kind of has to come to a consensus as to what the next set of initiatives will be. But I can just tell you sort of, you know, as president, I loved the opportunity to get to hand out the scholarship to young, talented fighters who are also seeking advanced education. I would love for it to be annual. I would love to open up geographically. So if you guys look at the scholarship requirements, it was actually for people who were local here, like in Los Angeles and Orange County. And I would love to be able to open that up and do it for more regions or different areas of the United States as well. You know, our focus, the emphasis has mostly been here because, as I said, we're small and this is home for us, right? So and it also has, as you guys are aware, a large boxing community. So a lot of amateur boxing. I think we have probably one of the largest LBCs or local boxing communities in the nation. So I think the opportunity to focus here, we love helping people here. I would love to make that an annual effort, and also to expand to other areas and not just Los Angeles.
That's awesome. I'm gonna hand the mic to my other panelists. Courtney, do you have any questions for Sean specifically about his foundation?
Yeah, just for our viewers and the people watching and listening out there, what's the best way for them to contribute to this worthy cause?
Yeah. Well, there's a couple things that you can do. Obviously, if you want to make donations, you can do that through our website, which is justboxing.org, which you guys are seeing here. You can do that through Facebook. So we're Just Boxing Foundation on Facebook. I believe we could do the same on Instagram. But I would say even more than that, every brand requires an element of trust in the marketplace. So donations are great, and of course they'll be put to good use, and hopefully people are starting to see that. But I can tell you that one of the sort of hurdles that we have to overcome is just trust in the space that we're operating in boxing. Just boxing is a relatively unknown quantity in this space. And I can tell you from experience, when we initially went to give away grants to Olympic trials qualifiers, that was harder than you might think. To actually give grants to fighters who are traveling and competing for travel and competition expenses, because the natural inclination, I think, of people is you know, what do you want, right? And a lot of times I think that in boxing it's a difficult space because there's so many people whose livelihood or who make money from fighters, right? You have your managers, you have your promotional companies. That there is kind of a real concern that people are going to try and poach or say, like, anytime you experience success, that someone's going to come up and say, hey, I can do more for you as a trainer, or I can do more for you as a manager, I can do more for you as a promoter. And unfortunately, I think that breeds quite a bit of distrust in the community. And so, like, even just doing things like giving us social shares, you know, if it's not donating, if you guys, you know, if you see that we have initiatives running, or that we have announcements and you do social shares and things like that, anything to help sort of legitimize Just Boxing Foundation, I think goes a long way. You know, I can say that when we gave the grants to the Olympic trials qualifiers, for instance, we didn't really get any takers on that until someone who had been on the podcast decided to record a video and release it and say, you know, thanks Just Boxing Foundation, you know, for helping me travel to Louisiana. And as soon as they did that, you know, obviously the other people who were competing in Louisiana kind of came and said, oh, you know, I'm interested in this. So that's kind of one of the things that I think the challenges that we're still working through as an organization.
Thank you for the question, Courtney. What's up, Tommy? I see you're back in with us. Tommy, any questions you may have for Sean about his foundation?
Yeah, man. So first off, really appreciate everything that you're doing for the boxing community, Sean. Just Boxing Foundation. This is absolutely phenomenal. You know, I know that you said that you do you want to help local first. Obviously, you take care of home, and you're looking to expand. Where do you see Just Boxing Foundation in 5 years from now?
That's a really good question. So Just Boxing Foundation is a passion project of mine. And first of all, congratulations, Tommy, by the way. I've seen the news for you on Facebook and stuff like that. So I just want to take a second and say congratulations. And also thanks for having me. So yeah, as I said, we're a relatively small organization, and there's a lot of things that we can get better at. And we just have to do that carefully. And I think that, we've already gone from operating just in Southern California to doing some initiatives in Northern California. We recently helped to sponsor an all women's amateur boxing tournament, the Beautiful Brawlers tournament in Northern California. And there's opportunities for us to expand to other regions. I know some of you fellas are in Texas and things like that. That's appealing to me as well, because I have family there, and because it's also another sort of hotbed for boxing. So definitely I would like to expand. But more than that, what I would say is the main things I would like to do is just get better at, things like fundraising, and get better at things like, social media presence. I'll be honest, because the team is as small as it is, and I'm not exceptional at those things because it's not my career. I'm learning as we go, and so is the rest of the team. But we've still been able to do good work in the meantime. But there's just a lot of opportunity for us to improve, and build trust, and get better at fundraising, get better at social media presence, and things like that.
Well, it's going to be very exciting what things are going to do with the foundation, and also congratulations on what you've done so far up to this point. The scholarship, helping boxers in need during the pandemic. I even remember you were even before the pandemic, you were in the process of supporting boxers in the Olympic trials. Right. I know it didn't come to fruition, obviously, but can you give us a sneak peek of that experience on that part of it?
Of providing support to the boxers in the Olympic trials? Yeah, we did actually get to do some of that. So I think we raised about $2,300 to give grants to Olympic trials qualifiers from Los Angeles and Orange County, and we were able to do that in 2019, in November 2019, I think, which is when they went to Louisiana for competition. There were 10 total recipients. That was a little bit different for us. It was the first initiative that we had ever done. And essentially what we did is we just specified a criteria and said anyone who ends up meeting this criteria will qualify for a grant. It was definitely a learning experience for us. One of the things that we didn't anticipate that I've already mentioned is needing to build trust with the people who end up meeting that criteria, because their first reaction is, wait a minute, who are you and what are you doing? Because we're going from follower one, right? Like we don't have anybody, and unless you've been on the show or seen the podcast, you really don't know who I am. I would also say I probably don't have the most dynamic personality. I love watching your guys' show. And let me explain, Tommy, all of you guys, you have so much sort of personality and passion for what you do. It's entertaining just to watch you. That's not really the way that Just Boxing Live worked. I would say that people watched that show for whoever was going to be on that week. You know what I mean? And we had a great following. I love all of the followers and supporters, but I'm not really the show. You know what I mean? I'm just kind of there. I'm like a prop, like the chair or the table. You know what I mean? To sort of steer the conversation one way or another. So yeah, I would say we had a lot of challenges with that. At the end of the day, we were able to give away 9 of the 10 grants though, and that's what's important. The final grant, the recipient wasn't interested in taking it, and that's fine too. It just rolled into the next initiative that we had. But I truly appreciate the learning experience. And I also got to meet some people. In fact, one of the grant recipients I just met for the first time at a local show here in Montebello, California. And I talked to her, obviously, when we issued the grant, but I met her in person. And I will say that from a personal satisfaction standpoint, the foundation does give me something that a feeling or an experience that I never truly got from doing the show, which is if someone recognized me from the show, that's cool. But like I said, it was never really it was never about being a star, more or less. But the first time someone came up to me and just said, thank you, I got the grant back in 2019, and that was so cool. Thank you. That was like the coolest thing I've ever experienced at a boxing match, outside of some of the great things. So I won't say that I don't get anything from it. There's definitely a certain amount of personal satisfaction.
Hey man, one thing I will say is you get some pretty awesome tattoos.
Right there.
Yeah.
You like that one, right?
Yeah.
And I just want to add, I think you're being too modest, because when you were on the show doing the Just Boxing podcast, one thing I give you very much credit for, you made all the guests feel like home at the boxing gym. And that was one of my highlights when I was watching the Just Boxing podcast. So I just want to give you props for that. But in my eyes, you were entertaining. So
that was the gift baskets, man. That's the gift basket talking.
As speaking of the gift baskets, I'm rocking your gift to me, Just Boxing shirt. So
yes,
had to represent. So
I can't hold that up again. Let me see that again. Oh, it's a second generation. That one should be pretty. Yeah. That's a second generation. I tried to improve the shirts over time. Like I would pick a shirt and then I would wear it. So, because my whole closet is filled with these and all the defective ones that we ever created. So I have like 1,000 Just Boxing shirts, and I can kind of see now over the years which ones have worn better, which ones still feel good and stuff. I think the Gen 2 that you've got on there is a pretty good one.
Yeah, I love the Gen 2. So that's the Gen. That's a Gen 2. I'm sticking with the Gen 2. But,
that's from the gift basket, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Did you drink the Fiji water already, or do you have that still too? No, I'm just kidding.
Which reminds me, you got to stock up on the shirts on the website. I see you're out of stock. So
yeah, well, the thing that's interesting is, and I mentioned getting better at fundraising. So the shirts have never actually been something that we've sold. So it's in some ways, the shirt is kind of like an item that means that you either were on Just Boxing Live, or you somehow supported one of our initiatives or causes. And so we did set it up like initially, like, oh, we're going to have a store and we're going to sell shirts in the store. But right now, it's really only been like a promotional giveaway or an item that you received because you've been a supporter or something like that. And so I haven't actually thought much on being like, it was never intended to be like a brand. It just kind of worked, if that makes sense. Like it wasn't like Just Boxing is going to be a brand and everyone's going to have their Just Boxing hoodies and their, all that kind of stuff. It was more just for whatever reason, this resonated with people. And so like, so we kind of are at a place where we have to decide how are we going to do that,
That's awesome. So, but yeah, before we head to the next segment of the program, again, congratulations on the foundation. We're very much looking forward to your next projects, what you're going to do with it. So, very excited. So, for the rest of the show, we got some boxing to talk about. A lot of exciting stuff that happened last night. First off, we're going to start off with the Top Rank side of things. Super middleweight prospect, Brooklyn zone, Edgar Berlanga, now 19-0, 16 KOs. He headlined last night's Top Rank card at the Hulu Theater in the Madison Square Garden, facing Canada's Steve Rolls. Before this contest, Berlanga has been taken to distance all 12 rounds in his previous 2 fights, which has been uncharacteristic of his first 16 fights, all ending in the first round. He's also coming off a previous fight where, despite the decision win, he suffered his first knockdown, as well as recovering from bicep surgery. Over the course of those last 2 fights, more has been focused on Berlanga's deficiencies than his more so than his knockout power. That concern continues even more after last night's fight against Steve Rolls. Despite the win on record, Berlanga's performance to me didn't really live up to expectations. Numerous times, Rolls was able to hold off Berlanga with his movement and jab. Instead of cutting, Berlanga slowly followed Rolls throughout the fight, constantly looking to land a power shot. The times when the fight was in the middle of the ring, Berlanga looked kind of indecisive, not knowing what type of shot to throw. After that performance, many, including myself, are thinking winning those first 16 fights all within the first round, although a noteworthy accomplishment, at the same time has been somewhat a disservice to him. So, Tommy, let's get your take on that fight between Berlanga and Steve Rolls.
Yeah, so, I agree. And I think that, when we're talking how he performed in that fight, you used a very valuable word, which was followed. I think that, a lot of people may see that come forward style that he had as like stalking because, as mentioned, his aura and his persona is about fear. It's about his power. It's about his knockout ability. But it wasn't a stalking. It wasn't like he was aggressively going after Rolls. Rolls was able to maneuver at will around the ring, and he was just dancing with him the whole time. He couldn't put any combinations together. I think I seen like two combinations the entire fight. One of them was like a barrage of misses. And so really he's got to do it. He's got a lot more to do. If he's really expecting to get in there with some top opponents, some top competition in the divisions, he's really got some work to do. He's going to have some very focused training. He's going to have to strengthen his skill set and not rely on one punch power. There were a number of times in the fight where he did connect a punch. And the commentators were trying to kind of build it up, and it really was flat. It was flat-footed. He as you mentioned, he couldn't cut off the ring. He was just walking around and second guessing each time. Stopping his punches. There was no reason why he shouldn't have been able to come in that fight and be impressive. To be honest, this was kind of his time. He was headlining this event. This was one of those fights where he needed to come in there and not only get a stoppage or a knockout, but a showcase performance. To kind of put those naysayers, even some of us as naysayers, a little bit as far as him being a little more hype. Put all of that to rest and to silence some of that, and he did nothing but make that louder, in my opinion. He was able to to get the win, but it wasn't impressive in my opinion. Too many issues. He had too much trouble with somebody like Steve Rolls.
I agree, and much to be desired, basically, as well. Corny, what's up, man? Share us your thoughts about the fight.
Yeah, I'm actually I haven't seen the fight in its entirety yet. I was actually catching up on it before we went on the air. But from what I've seen so far and seen from the highlights, I take a few things from it. I think Top Rank could possibly benefit him and benefit themselves if they looked at possibly or explored possibly moving him down to 160. I think that might be he's young enough to do it and it not take as much of a physical toll. Maybe a couple fights to test the waters and to see how he operates down there. But I think ultimately a move down to 160 might be beneficial for him. Secondly, I think along the lines with what was done with Teofimo Lopez, to where he had some success, and particularly against Lomachenko, is a fresh voice in the corner. I think a lot of times we see the scenario in boxing with guys who have their dads in the corner or who are primarily trained by their fathers, and their fathers really weren't fighters, really didn't have a lot of boxing experience, just because they were the first person to work with him in the gym and they got him up to this point. I mean, that's a formula that can work in the amateurs, as far as in the pro ranks. I think it can work well for a while, but then you hit a plateau. And I think ultimately that's what we're seeing with Edgar Berlanga. I think as far as the instructions given to him in the corner, how things are going in the camp, and it's basically how he's being managed on a ground level. I think his dad has basically told him has basically imparted all the knowledge to him that he can at this point. And I mean, I'm not advocating for him getting rid of his father or whatnot, but I mean, adding somebody else to the corner, and him from being from New York, there are a plethora of guys who they could supplement in that corner, who could give him some sound advice. And then another thing is, I keep going back and forth whether it's the matchmaking or it's just him being a victim of early success. And I think maybe it's a mixture of those things. Usually Top Rank, with them bringing up young prospects, the matchmaking and the development part is what they do better than anybody else. But also I think maybe a disservice of him getting those 16 first round knockouts is that there was nothing for him to learn in the ring in real time with that, and now we're seeing him kind of not particularly digress, but it's kind of in reverse, to where there probably should have been a learning phase or a learning curve at the beginning, and then he gets up to being a beast where he's knocking out all these guys. It's kind of going in reverse, where he came in hot, fearsome right hand, a lot of power, a lot of ability in that aspect, and be able to get guys out early. And then now that the level of competition has gone to another place, now he's pretty much doing that on the job training, if you will. I mean, the thing is, the positives is we know he's got the stamina to go 12 rounds. We know he's capable of doing so. We know he has that experience. We know he knows what the 12th round is like. I think he looked better in this fight than he did in his last out. I think there's some things that need to get tweaked. I'm not ready to give up on Edgar Berlanga and label him as a fraud or a hype job or whatnot. But I mean, there's vulnerabilities out there that can be exploited as he goes up, and especially if he has an eye towards challenging towards a title, especially in a division like 168. But yeah, I think possibly going down in weight and getting another set of eyes and another voice in the corner could benefit it. It could benefit him.
Definitely. And to add to your point, yeah, those first 16 fights with the first round end outs, there was not much for him to analyze from. So hopefully in the next few fights, of course we want to see those spectacular finishes, but in those finishes, I don't know if I'm saying it right. We see some struggle in those wins. We could see some of that, and
he's kind of like on a Deontay Wilder trajectory.
Yeah,
if you will. We saw Deontay Wilder knock out close to 30 guys before he fought for a title, and then that was the fight where he went 12 rounds, and it wasn't one for the history books, but he got it done. So I mean, it's obviously Edgar Berlanga, if he fights a title fight in his next fight or whatever, I don't see him coming out the same way Deontay Wilder did. But I mean, when you got a guy who's very heavy-handed, who's gifted in that aspect, and is pretty keen to get guys out of there early. I mean, it's a given that the fundamentals are going to lack if they need to be relied on. And this is what we're seeing. We're seeing him in with guys where he's gonna need to show something more than power. And what he's been showing aside from power, that's what's far from impressive. But I mean, getting them a sense of fundamentals, and just somebody to work with him on the boxing aspect to incorporate the power into that. I mean, there's potential there. It all basically just depends on how it's going to play out.
Yeah, I think, man, I think that one thing that we gotta, as we kind of dance around it and talk about it, but those were all first rounds. I could see, like you mentioned, Courtney, Wilder was knocking everybody out, but they weren't first rounds. And so there's an extreme amount of shortage in the volume of bouts that he's had. When you start adding up how many rounds he's actually had, over this amount of years, it's very
6 years as a pro, 34 pro rounds. That's wow.
Yeah, that 34 rounds, and that's because the last couple of fights, literally, so that's the part that where people may say hype. We got to understand that this dude, he's still completely green, when it comes to his actual pro career experience, and so we got to give him a few of these type of fights and see what happens. And like you said, hopefully that training is what's going to really develop, and we'll see some things added to his arsenal.
Great stuff. Sean, your take on Berlanga's performance last night?
Well, I have to agree with a lot of that. And if I had to describe the performance, I would use the word uninspiring. And I don't really mean that in a negative way towards him, but I think, I'm watching it in real time. We've literally just finished the main event of Alexis Rocha and Blair Cobbs. And so when you switch over to this by comparison, right, it's not the type of kind of follow-up performance that that you would want to have. But I will say this, I also think that what you're watching is a phase of discovery that a lot of people would be going through at this point in their career who had the limited experience that he actually has. He's just doing it on television with a hype train behind him, right? So he has this promotional entity behind him that's been really building him up in an effective way, because we're talking about him right now, right? So they have a promotional entity who's been building him up in a really effective way, but you're seeing him go through sort of trials and tribulations that, in all honesty, he needs to be going through now. You want to find those things out now against Steve Rolls. You don't want to find them out when you're facing a world champion across from you or someone else, because if you have a bad night on that night, you might go to sleep and it might change your career, right? So I actually think that these types of fights are really important for his development. And the problem is just up to this point, everything's been built up. There's been so much momentum behind Edgar Berlanga that all the eyes are on him and they go, wow, he's not that special. He's not that special, right? But the truth is he's a young man and he has an opportunity to go and correct a lot of these mistakes. And it's much, much better for his development to experience these types of fights now against Steve Rolls than it is to figure out that you don't have it later, right? You could look at last night and say, it's really going to be critically important for you to work on a jab, just jab more, set up shots more. Don't try and just lunge in with big shots. Don't be so heavy all of the time. And this is when you want to have that learning experience, because a lot of times when you see guys who've relied on power for so long, the truth is there's a threshold. You get to a certain level where you're facing world-class opposition, and guess what? They all can take a punch and they all can punch real hard. That's why they are where they are, right? So you need to know those things before you get there and realize, when you're in the ring with someone else who can bang, or you're in the ring with someone else who is really dynamic and you're having trouble kind of chasing them down and figuring it out. Much better to find out now.
I think another thing that might be Berlanga's saving grace is if he does decide to stay at 168, is those belts are sewed up. You know what I'm saying? Canelo Alvarez has all 4 belts, and he's in a sweepstakes phase to where he's very selective in picking and choosing, and the sanctioning bodies aren't really going to press a guy like Canelo to take his mandatory or strip him. So he's, it's kind of like one of those things is, at 168, Canelo is definitively the top dog. He's basically got carte blanche to do whatever the hell he wants. And so with Berlanga in that, being a prospect or being an up and comer in that division or whatnot, he's got the time and there's a lack of pressure for him to go in, and so like, or when we're going to see him fight for a title, or when are we going to see him? It's kind of like, and it's like, hey, these belts are jammed up, and in the meantime, Top Rank can pretty much spin it as it's like, hey, we're just biding our time with him. In the meantime, we're going to develop him. So I think if he decides to stay at 168 and it's basically the status quo continues with him, he's got the room and he's got the time and to develop without the pressure to put him in there against the killer. So.
Great points all around as far as Edgar Berlanga. So next up, the other fight on the opposite side was the DAZN matchup. It was the welterweight fight between in-house Goldenboy fighters Alexis Rocha of Santa Ana and the very outspoken, flamboyant Blair the Flair Cobbs, who's been on both this program and the Just Boxing podcast. The fight took place at the USC Galen Center, replacing the Virgil Ortiz-Michael McKinson fight. As far as the fight, Cobbs wasted no time in building the fight up, name dropping and criticizing Errol Spence along the way to the media. It was a risky strategy in getting his name in the mix with the current top fighters in the division ahead of his fight with Rocha. The fight itself was all action. Both southpaws seemed to match each other's firepower in the early rounds. I think around the fourth or fifth round, Rocha seemed to figure out Blair's rhythm. From that point on, Rocha was landing the left hand more consistently on Cobbs. In the eighth, Rocha made Cobbs fall back with a clean left hand, which was immediately followed by a right hook to score the knockdown. In the ninth round, the ref decided to stop the fight after seeing Cobbs receive more punishment. But yeah, let's talk about it. I'm going to start with you, Sean. Let's get your reaction to this fight.
I loved the fight before it even started. I think it's a great fight. I was telling you before we jumped on the live, I think we're fortunate. That main event, in my opinion, is probably a better main event than the one we would have gotten had Virgil and obviously I don't wish any harm on Virgil Ortiz or anything like that. But that's a well-matched fight against two people who are at a similar place in their career. I think it was like a minus 200 favorite for Alexis Rocha, so just very slight favorite. And Blair Cobbs makes for entertainment everywhere he goes. Alexis, I've had the opportunity to interview him as well. And you could see that just having Blair opposite him created better press conferences and promotion than having any other opponent opposite him. So I actually think like the press conferences were better, the build-up was better, and the fight itself was probably better than what was scheduled as the main event for it. So I think that they definitely did the right thing promoting that to the main event when the Virgil Ortiz fight fell through. It's a highly entertaining fight. And I just think that in this case, Blair has shown vulnerability quite a bit in his previous fights, right? So he gets hit cleanly, he goes down. He's also an absolute lion, right? So like you could see he's down, but he's never been out, right? He gets up and he fights on. So I think that if before the fight, the reason that you have to look at Alexis Rocha and say maybe he's the favorite is he's a little bit more defensively sound from what we've seen compared to Blair, even though they can both bang, for what they've done. And ultimately, I think that's more or less what manifested in the fight. Blair, once he was hurt, I feel like he never really recovered. So, he got hurt, he got on that bicycle, he used his legs, he used his athleticism, which he's very clearly a very finely tuned athlete, right? I mean, he was using his legs, he was all over that ring, he was in and out as best as he could, right? So very athletic individual. It just wasn't enough, and I don't think he was really ever able to recover from the fact that he had been hurt, or stunned by Alexis Rocha. But I loved the fight. I absolutely loved it.
Great. Yeah. And, you know, speaking of Blair Cobbs, exciting fighter. He always very awkward. And again, this was always in the back of my mind too. He's very defensively liable. And it's shown in its throughout his fights. And I think it finally caught up to him when he faced someone as good as Alexis Rocha. And that's how it played out. But Tommy, let's get your thoughts on last night's fight.
Woo! so,
if it had to be with me, somebody was down to do it though.
Yeah, we had to hit that, man. But so one thing I will say is, I love Blair Cobbs, but last night he got the attention that he was looking for. And namely those that he was calling out and trying to stir up. At post fight, there was a lot of Twitter posts, from the top dogs that were really kind of eating him alive on that, and just kind of giving him the business a little bit. So after a performance like that, he got what he was looking for. But as Sean said, he's a lion, so he's gonna lick them wounds and he's gonna keep going. He's not like the performer he is, the entertainer that he is. That like he wants to garner that, because whether it is playful or serious, he's going to take all of that energy and he's going to project that energy back in a way that we know it coming from Blair to Flair. Regarding the fight itself, I felt that, Rocha, I think it was Sergio Mora before the fight, like right before the fight, that said, we just came out of like a very technical fight. This next fight is going to be the complete opposite. Like it's going to be just like a crazy fight full of energy. It's going to be a brawl. And I think that for the most part, it wasn't as much of a brawl as we expected it to be, because of that liability defensively from Cobbs. Rocha was able to systematically, little by little, break him down a little bit. I saw it early on where, he was beating him to the punch. There were a lot of moments where Cobbs, he was trying to move around, trying to come in on him, and he just before you know it, he just kept tapping him as he was stepping to it over and over and over. And they did go back and forth, but I think that some of that took away one of Blair's strongest pieces to him, which is his confidence. I think that started to eat at him a little bit. And over the course of that fight, Rocha took care of business, man. He was able to, as Sean said, once he actually hit him with some pretty solid shots, you saw it. You saw he would physically kind of just jump back, and like he was a little, it wasn't like shock, but he was taken back in that moment. And those are those moments where like the champions and those that like turn the dog on, those are the moments where people just pounce on you. And he didn't get pounced on, but it was still it was a slow cook. He just kept coming after him. He just kept that pressure on him well enough that, by what was that, the 9th round, it was enough. I do feel that Blair's going to bounce back from this. I feel that we're going to see a lot more from him. I do feel that he needs to tighten up, his game when it comes down to how he actually executes in the ring and not be so full of the energy. But he needs a lot more technical ability when it comes to his defense and setting up, not being so telegraphing, I guess you can kind of say, not even in just his punches, but in his movements. You can get that timing down very, very easily. So I look forward to what we see out of this. I'm in and out the ring, to be honest, because I'm ready to see what kind of reaction he's going to have when it comes down to a lot of the things that were said, because we know he's going to have some reactions. So I think that's going to be entertaining as well. So I'm still tuned in. I'm still a fan. So we'll see what happens.
If I could just piggyback on one thing that you mentioned in his confidence, that I will say that Blair did have moments of success in the fight. And in particular, those moments where his confidence and his bravado kind of convinced Alexis Rocha to try and outshine him in ways that were completely unnecessary. So like Rocha was experiencing great success, applying pressure with a high guard, cutting off the ring, doing things like that. But he would get to moments in the round where Blair's kind of antics would cause Rocha to instead get into a battle of feints, where we're both trying to feint to see who's going to land the better counter punch. And Rocha would drop his hands and he would kind of move his head and almost mirror, in a way, some of the bravado and things that Blair was kind of projecting out onto him. And in those moments, Blair was winning in those exchanges. So it's not like the confidence, definitely it ran low, I think, by the end of it, mainly because he's hurt. It's hard to be confident at that point in time. But you can see he did have moments of success there. And the confidence and the antics and all that stuff, I think, contributed to those moments of success.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I mean, Rocha did in the press and in the post fight, he did mention that it took him some rounds to figure him out mentally. So that adds more to your point, Sean, and also Courtney. I mean Tommy, but Courtney, let's get your thoughts on last night's fight.
Hey, as my man Roy Bennett would say, dude got found out. You know, it was pretty much that simple. I took it as one of those fights where, I think Blair Cobbs was coming in there, looking at Rocha as a stepping stone opponent to a better opportunity, or possibly a title shot. When you're calling out or criticizing or just talking shit to dudes who hold straps before you're going in and fighting as a replacement headliner, I think that speaks to your mental focus and your mind state at that moment, and that he's already thinking like, what's next? I think Rocha came in and he watched the film on Blair and basically tailored his training and his training camp around exploiting Blair Cobb's defensive liabilities, and the thing is, if you're defensively liable as a fighter, it doesn't matter how athletic you are, it doesn't matter how hard you hit, it doesn't matter how much power you pack, it doesn't matter how gifted you are. That's usually how you get found out, is getting stopped or getting put on the canvas. We saw with Roy Jones, we saw with Deontay Wilder, we've seen it's a story that continually plays out time and time again in boxing. And I think Rocha, he went in there to weather the storm. I think he knew it was going to be difficult, but I think Rocha's mind state is just like, hey, if I'm still in this fight at a certain point, it's going to be mine. And then with Blair's reaction and how he looked down the stretch, it was like one of those things. It's where you're expecting to go in and make quick work of a guy. You're doing, you're doing everything that you plan to do, and he's still there. And that becomes demoralizing, because then, you get found out in that, well, you didn't really come in with a plan B or C, so, as far as Blair Cobbs, hey, shout out to him, alumnus of the show. He's one of our best guests in interviews. Never a dull moment with dude, and I think just with his personality and his ability to just market himself, and just his will, with his backstory, just to be in this moment and to be where he is in the sport of boxing. I think it's one of those things where we're gonna see, we're gonna see him again in nationally televised fights on the DAZN platform. And we all know, with boxing being a grimy business entity that it is, take the sport out of it, or the athletic pursuit aspect out of it, and just looking at boxing as the business. We chopped it up with a friend of the program Eddie Sanchez and his coach Jason Gillespie several times on this. It's like, yo, when you lose, and especially if you lose in front of in front of a televised audience, the unfortunate thing is your phone starts ringing off the hook. Because there's a lot of people thinking you're an easy meal, or sometimes you got to go ahead and eat and get your meals off people discounting you as an easy out or an easy meal. And so I mean, if anybody has the ability to capitalize and eat off that and to turn the negative to a positive, I think it's a guy like Blair Cobbs. So.
Great points all around as far as the very flashy fight between Alexis Rocha and Blair Cobbs. The last segment I want to touch upon is Jamal Charlo. He's been making some headlines. We saw that he was in negotiations to face Jaime Munguia, but that fell apart because of some promotional disagreements. But whatever the case may be, just on a broader scale, as far as Canelo's concerned, Canelo, he's been asking these guys, hey, what are you guys offering me if I'm going to face you guys? And as far as Jamal Charlo, the fight with Munguia would have been a great fight to serve as a prelude to a potential Canelo fight, or even another name. Benavidez was thrown in the mix when Jamal Charlo was on Mike Tyson's podcast. So I just want to get your thoughts on that situation. Tommy, let's get your thoughts.
So the first thing I'm gonna say is, I mean, I think y'all saw it, and the number of people that follow, in the boxing world, hot boxing, Mike Tyson and his podcast. Jamal, like, hey, you got to name names, man. Like you too much into the diva role right now. Like I think that there's plenty of people that he could be fighting and that he's not fighting because he's trying to chase that bread, and he's trying to chase too much bread that he, in my eyes, hasn't necessarily full on earned. I think that he's obviously he is a star, most definitely. But just trying to come after like people like Canelo, the whole situation and we kind of expected this situation with him and Munguia to kind of fall out a little bit, and it ended up going that route. But yeah, I think that I want to see him step up, stop talking so much shit. Like talk your shit, man. Like do what you do. That's part of your game. But I want to see you step in there with the best, whoever it is that's willing to sign that contract with you, and go talk that shit in the ring. Like, you talk Lions only, you and your brother, y'all Lions only. Okay, be that lion. We just talked about a lion, and Blair Cobbs that was willing to get out there and do what he do, fell short. But just like we said, he's going to bounce back and keep talking shit and just keep going. Like I want to see something like that in somebody as talented and gifted as Jamal Charlo. So that part for me is continuing to be disappointing. And as I was bringing that up, somebody as bad man as Tyson is, to his face calling him out. And Tyson had him shook. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like Tyson have so many people shook any damn way because he's Tyson, but Tyson kept it real with him and said, "Say the names, man. Say the names," and he wouldn't say it. And what happened right after that? Benavidez got on Twitter. Twitter is like the all things. We got just boxing on, but Twitter is like all things boxing for where everybody goes to talk shit, And Benavidez went right on there and said, "I ain't got nothing to offer, but you fighting somebody like Sulecki. Like, come on, bro. Like, you steady trying to talk shit, but you're not talking shit. So he got his Gregory Hines tap dance shoes on, and I want to see him really step up. So Lions only, he being a little kitten right now.
Great stuff, Tommy. Sean, let's get your thoughts about Charlo trying to, his search for that big name to add to his resume to justify a fight with Canelo. Your thoughts, Sean?
I think it's going to be difficult for him to find it at 160, to be honest, because essentially, well, for right now, the main players at 160, almost everybody in the top 10 has a dance partner coming up. Either from April through June, they've all got somebody. I think Andrade is fighting Parker. Now Charlo is going to fight Sulecki. Triple G and Murata. I think maybe Arislandi Lara is the only one who doesn't as WBA regular champion. But I'm missing. Oh, and Munguia now the WBC set a title eliminator with Carlos Adames, right? So they've all got dance partners. But the thing is like I named a lot of those cats are in the top 10. Like people like Sulecki, Carlos Adames. They're good fighters, but they're not the marquee sort of marketable fights, or they're not the name for your resume if you're trying to build a case to say like I'm going for the the Canelos of the world, or at least in my opinion they're not the most marketable fights that can be made. So if you're not fighting the other champions, like if you're not fighting Triple G, Arislandi Lara, Demetrius Andrade, there's not really anybody else at that weight class for you. So I think really if you want to make your name is going to be at 68. With people who Canelo has beaten already, right? Or obviously David Benavidez would be a significant, opponent. But I think, it's unlikely because Triple G, obviously the writing's sort of on the wall with the DAZN contract that he'll be fighting Canelo, and Andrade is supposed to move up. So he's not going to be at 60 anymore after the Parker fight. So it's kind of like, or at least that's what the intelligence is today. Not that it can't change tomorrow. So I don't know that marquee matchup is really there, outside of Arislandi Lara.
Good point, Sean. Corny, let's get your thoughts.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and go Kanye right now. I want to apologize to all our viewers that we picked this as like the last topic of the show. And, as far as Jamal Charlo, a.k.a. Lions Only, he will no longer be referred to that on the show. It will from now on, it will be Jamal Fresh Step Kitty Litter Charlo. And with that being said, we're over an hour. That was the last topic we chose. So I'm gonna go ahead and wrap my segment up and just go ahead and do the shout outs. Hey, first off, the first shout out I want to give is to Kendra Tovar. And congratulations, Tommy, for doing the right thing and wifing up that fine woman that you got there. Hey, Kendra, we're gonna go ahead and put the In and Out Whataburger beef to the side because like you family now. So we got to get past that. Hey, congratulations to y'all. Hey, Sean, hey, thank you so much for coming on the show, and thank you so much for sharing this movement that you're involved in with Just Boxing. It goes along with the hashtag I always continually put up with gloves up, guns down. As far as fostering boxing in our inner cities, and particularly in the LA area, and with the youth, and just basically providing an outlet that's just something else that's good out there for kids in these times that we're living in. Hey, thank you so much. Thank you for being an exemplary American. Thank you for all you're doing for the sport of boxing. I'm gonna roll it in and do the Oscar shout outs. Want to go ahead and give a shout out to everybody who is supporting the movement. Anthony Stack Saldana and the Supreme Boxing Team. Want to give a shout out to Tiffany Daniels, First Lady of Boxing. Want to give a shout out to Marcus Nall, Ohio Runs Boxing. Want to give a shout out to Roy Bennett, Nick Angarame, Chris Ramos, Daniel Pena, Julio Z. Give a shout out to Michael Gomez. Hopefully he's back on with us soon.
Hey, I'm gonna go Kanye too. I'm gonna let you finish. But happy birthday to Michael Gomes.
Hey,
saying?
No doubt, absolutely. Hey, that was needed. I'll be Taylor Swift for that. Yeah. And hey, we are international. I didn't get to shout out our international listeners and viewers last time because I had to go real quick. But I'm back on that. Hey, want to give a shout out to everybody who's tuning in Canada, Mexico, all over the United States. Everybody messing with us down in the Caribbean and Latin America, Argentina, Brazil, Chile. We love y'all. Puerto Rico, everybody in Europe, the UK, France, Italy, Germany. Rocking with us hard. Everybody in Africa, down in South Africa, Namibia, Angola, Tanzania, Nigeria, Ghana, Sierra Leone, Liberia, and everybody in the down in the Asia Pacific area and Oceania, whether it be Australia, New Zealand, Papua New Guinea, American Samoa, Tonga, Japan, South Korea, and everybody else in between. Hey, thank you for loving us. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being a part of this movement, Gang Signs. And you know what it is. You know what it is. You know who I am. Courtney Tanner, a.k.a. Burt Brown Sugar, the one you hate to love and the one you love to hate. Hey, please continue to mess with us. Please continue to rock with the movement. Next time you tune in, hey, tell a friend. Hey, tell them to tell a friend. Bring your next door neighbor. Bring your mama, your daddy, your sister, your brother, your auntie, all your cousins. Hey, your baby mama, your significant other. Hey, we good. Mic drop.
See you, Courtney. Tommy, any closing words?
You asking for closing words after that? You have to end the whole show right there. You just kill the whole stream after that. Nobody can follow that.
It ain't too much to say after the Burt Brown Sugar go off on the Oscar speech and we don't turn the music on. No, hey, no, man. Like, I just, again, man, thank you, Sean, for joining us. We really appreciate it, man, and are blessed to have somebody like you that's doing what you do, for boxing and just for people, around in your local area. And also, once you branch out, man, I know it's going to be phenomenal. So I absolutely look forward to it because I know what's going to happen. Special shout out to Aaron, appreciate you always behind the tools, making them things happen, man. Once again, shout out Michael Gomes. Happy birthday, bro. Hope that it's been outstanding. We know you've been doing the big things, so continue to do those big things. And all of our listeners, supporters, and then obviously, as everybody said, thank you for your congratulations and all of that stuff. But, special shout out to my fiance, Kendra. I love you. Let's do this.
Hey, before you roll out, hey, Stephen Ruiz, hey, big shout out. Hey, thanks again for messing with us, man. Hey, you could have been anywhere else in the world you wanted to be on a Sunday. Hey, but you're here with us, and we love you for that. Hey, and the last thing, I swear it's the last thing. Hey, please continue to pray for peace in Ukraine and Russia, and that this senseless violence over there stops, and that everybody can return back to normalcy and return back to their families. And yeah.
Great words, everybody. Sean, again, thank you for coming on with us. It's always an honor to have you on. Also, we're very much looking forward on your next initiatives with the Just Boxing Foundation. Any closing words or shout outs you want to give out?
No, just again, my sincerest thanks. I told you guys, and I truly mean it. I enjoy your show very much. All the character and everything you guys bring to it is so refreshing. So I appreciate the opportunity to come on here and talk about it, and just thank you.
Awesome. Thank you again, Sean. Thank you again, Tommy, Mr. Tommy Rush Jr. Congratulations again on your engagement. Also, he's the head of BSHQ Barbecue. If you're in need of some good barbecue delivery, catering, his Instagram is on the BSHQ Barbecue. Direct line 801-360-2214. Also, Courtney Tanner, shout out to you, man. Thank you for joining us. Also appreciate you for your service, as well as you, Tommy. Also, shout out again to Michael Gomes. Happy birthday, man. Enjoy your big day out there. Also, everyone else out there, thank you for watching. Have a Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Stay safe, guys. I'm Aaron Sorial from Los Angeles. This is episode 80 of the Standing 8 podcast. See you till next time. Peace out.